Hey, what is going on, guys? Thank you so much for joining me today on Vicious Whispers, episode 34. There's been a break. I think I took off about 3 weeks. Wasn't intentional, wasn't planned. Just got caught up with a lot of bullshit. Lots of it was good. Had another cool trip up to Oregon. My wife went with me to go to my friend Michael Porman's celebration of life. A little party before, like last chance to say goodbye to people before he passes away. He's the guy I was talking about on the last episode that has CTE and is also dying of leukemia. So my wife went up there with me. We had a very nice time the first 2 days. We just hung out in Portland. She got to go train. I did not. So I was proud of her for doing that. She went to 10th Planet Portland, had a great class. I, however, could not because of my arm. And then on Saturday, we drove up to Astoria, got to hang out at the party, and also see another good friend of mine, Matty Zovich, who I played football with at Brown. So awesome reconnecting with him. I had the chance to talk to him a little bit about whether or not he was having brain issues, and he's not. But then also how he remembered us, like how did Porman compared to me, compared to other football players, as far as like aggression and anything out of the ordinary, like what was our personality like back then? And he kind of looked at me, and my wife standing right next to me, and I told him, I was like, it's okay. I was like, she already kind of knows. But then he went on to say, he's like, you were an anomaly. He's like, you were scary. I was a little bit different than the type of people that were going to Brown back then. And that's what he remembered, and other friends remembers tattoos, motorcycle, knife, gun, all the kind of shit that wasn't supposed to be there. But anyhow, it was awesome reconnecting with him. Had a really good trip. Reread The Anatomy of Violence. I'm almost done with that book, but I've been doing a lot of searching, trying to figure out, okay, when did I become so violent? I've always been attracted to violence and death, and I was wondering if, is it something that I was born with? Was it because of the blows to the head? Did that make stuff worse? All the trauma I've had. But then I was going through, my mom took notes when we were all the kids were in preschool. Part of the preschool classes was taking notes, and she took very detailed notes. She was a teacher. She enjoyed doing that, but I read the one from when I was 2 years old, 3 years old, and then 4 years old. And at each of them, her main concern about my behavior was that I was fighting. I was fighting with my brother. I was teasing him. I was throwing things at my sister. I was sounding like I was just a little piece of shit. Well, I'm not going to call myself a piece of shit. I had a lot of aggression. And so whether it's nurture or nature, that seems a lot like I was definitely more aggressive than my brothers or sisters at that point. So, if nothing else, is just interesting to me. It's not going to change anything, but just, I don't know. I kind of enjoy looking at that sort of thing. So that's where I ended up with that. What else? We went up to Portland. My wife loved the city. That was her first time getting to really see it, and so she really enjoyed it. Wants to probably get a house up there. So whether it's a vacation property or whatever, maybe something we can do until we end up retiring and are prepared to move. But she really enjoys it, wants to keep going up there. So I don't know if it'll be Portland exactly, but our next trip, I want to go up to Bend, Oregon, see how that compares, if we like it more or less, and go from there. As far as training, I still haven't been able to do jiu-jitsu. Went to an awesome the Subversive tournament, I think it was a couple weeks ago. 10th Planet won. Amazing performance by all the guys. There were tons of friends on the card. Front row seats, and the whole time I was so fucking depressed. I didn't use any cannabis before I went because I knew something was up. I knew I wasn't feeling great about it. I usually have like a lot of anxiety before going into crowded areas anyhow. And normally I would use cannabis to deal with it, but this time I was like, you know what? Let me just see how I do without it. And so during each of the matches, I was super into them. I was excited. I was watching them. But in between the breaks, I was super depressed, and I couldn't talk to anyone. It was not a good thing. I think everything I've been dealing with the brain stuff, like looking at my friends' situations and stuff like that, has been affecting me. And then also not being able to train, not being up on stage, is like, fuck, I want to compete. I want to do what these guys are doing. And I've been limited. So that was tough. But it was good for me to look at it, examine it. And so I did get back an MRI. I went and got my MRI done, and I got checked out by my doctor who did the stem cell in my shoulder. He was blown away by the amount of inflammation in my shoulder, in my AC joint. He showed it to me, how it was all filled with fluid. He ended up taking out 3 cc's of fluid and then shot me up with some cortisone. He said give it 7 to 10 days, which it has been. It's been like 12. And I went to physical therapy today just to check it out, see whether or not I'm going to be able to do PT or if I need to get it scoped. So either way, I'm good. I just want to know, like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is how it's going to go down. So whether it's scoped or just physical therapy, I should know that probably in about a week. I'll know whether or not my shoulder responds. Right now it feels good. I'm going to the same guy that my wife is going to, Dr. Ingalls in Brea, and he's awesome. So today was my first session with him, but very intelligent training. I really like his approach, and the outlook looks good. Let's see what's going on. Oh, this week, not going to be getting a lot of work done, but it's all good. My buddy Carl Domini and his son Luca are coming out to stay with us for about 5 days. His son, I think he's 1 year older and 1 grade older than my son. But these guys love each other. They love playing with each other. The last couple of years, we've been doing trips to each other's houses, either once or twice a year, because they're all the way in Rhode Island. And I think last time I was out there, they were both on the podcast as well. Oh, my old podcast, Unlocking. So I'm sure we'll probably do like a kid-friendly one, and then probably one just Carl and myself, depending on what we get up to. Who knows? But that should be cool. Got him coming out tomorrow. He's going to be here till Sunday. And then Sunday is Midsummer Scream. Yeah, not a very good scream, but I don't want to scare anybody. So that is at the Long Beach Convention Center. I'm only going on Sunday. I'm going to be there all day Sunday. The first half of it, I will be doing interviews for the podcast. Probably chop it up into a couple different interviews. And then on, I think at 1:30, I will be on a panel discussing young adult horror fiction. And then after that, I'll just be at the Horror Writers Association booth, signing books, talking to writers, that sort of thing. So if you're in the Long Beach area, definitely cruise by and check it out. But go on Sunday so you can see me. Go support everyone else too if you could only make it on Saturday. But go see me. So that should be fun. I do enjoy meeting all kinds of people, handing out my pamphlets, trying to find new readers. I have been making a lot of new readers through Voracious Readers, a program where you get books for free. I think you have to sign up for the author's newsletter, and I think they hope you'll give a review, but I don't think it's required. But I've met a lot of cool readers through that, gotten a lot of really good reviews, got some shitty ones too, but that's to be expected. Because all the fucking assholes. No, if you give me a shitty review, it's totally fine. I get it. Everyone has their own opinion. Just those opinions are wrong. Another really cool thing when I was up in Portland was that I got to meet with Sage Ricci and his partner Tom Spanbauer, my writing mentor. Tom was the one who convinced me to throw away an entire draft of Brightside that I thought was done and rewrite it in first person. It made the book so much better. It was a long process, but his dangerous writing program that him and Sage taught, that's what changed me as a writer, changed me probably as a person as well, that whole experience. And it's the writing assignment I got from there is the one that I give to all my friends. and I think it's definitely helped a lot of people. So it was awesome being able to run into him. Sage even did one of my tattoos, the one inside my arm. When I go back, I'm going to have him do something else. Not sure what I'll have done. Maybe just have him pretty at my back a little bit. But it was cool seeing him. We got to talk a lot about acupuncture, which is going to be one of the chapters in the brain book. He's just graduating right now. I think he's going to be the commencement speaker for his class next month, which is awesome. And so it was cool. It was a cool, I'm definitely going to have my acupuncturist weigh in on the book. I'll be interviewing her as well. But it's kind of cool because he has a focus on older people and a lot of the brain stuff, and he's just got through school right now, so all this stuff is fresh in his mind. So I'll definitely be interviewing him. And then I also talked to him about how disappointing it was to shop around his novel. He spent so much time on it. He's an incredible writer, but he spent all this time on this novel and then kept getting rejection after really close ones too, just because the style of the book is a little bit different, and they only want one writer like that in their group of authors that they represent, and blah 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 blah, all this bullshit. But very discouraging, and I've been there. So I talked to him and said, hey man, I was like, what if we just put it out ourselves? I said, I know he's an excellent writer. We'll give it a good edit. I'll give all my input. I was like, I know we can create an awesome book. And so I think we are going to do that. And I told him it was for a selfish reason too, because when I'm reading it, I'm going to be trying to think of a try not to die that we can make out of it so we can cross promote. I'm always thinking about myself. But yeah, I thought that would be awesome. Also, while I was there, I got to meet with Scott McQuarrie, who was Chael Sonnen's coach. He was a coach at Team Quest. Had an awesome experience with Scott when I went up there. For a couple years ago, when I was writing Unlocking the Cage, I think the day before, I had just gotten a really bad concussion at Team Quest Gresham, which was Matt Lindland's. I got slammed on the ground. It was a brutal workout. Fortunately, I went and found a chiropractor. I was able to get over the headache and everything else. But when I went to Scott's class, I told him, I was like, hey, I just went through, all this. I'm old. I don't know if I can handle it. But after I talked with him, he assured me, the team wouldn't be like that. They'd be safe. And I had an awesome day of training. And since then, we've been friends. He's read my books. He's always supportive. And so it was cool to go up there and interview him. It was about a concussion he received that, a couple different ones. But one of them, I think it was 11 or 12 months that his personality changed. He was dealing with all these different things, anxiety, all these different emotional states that he hadn't been dealing with before, and all these other problems. So it was really nice to talk with him and his wife. And because his wife was the one who detected lots of this stuff, she helped come up with coping mechanisms and helping him deal with it and get through it. And I think that's going to be one of the main themes with this traumatic brain injury book I'm working on, is just how important that support system is. Because as men, as fighters, as tough guys, it's kind of hard to judge where we're at and want to admit we need help or anything. And I think anything brain related is definitely like that. You may not know why you're feeling a certain way. You may not know it has something to do with the blow you took. But interesting stuff. One of the things that he really said made a huge impact on him was meditation and the Wim Hof breathing. And I realized that's something I need to get back into. I know how powerful it is, but it's something I hadn't been doing. So I am starting that up again. Not doing it every day, but hopefully I will get to that point. But it's definitely helping. What else is going on? The other thing I want to mention, I know I've brought this up a bunch, but with the short story collection, I cut a bunch of stories. I was like, that one sucks. I don't want it. There are a couple stories that would have made the book a little bit thicker, more of a full-length type collection, but I decided to cut them. I was like, I don't want that. If I'm not good with the story, then it's not going to go in. And I decided also to leave out the ones from Somber Stroll. So these are going to be all new stories for the most part. I think 7 were published before, but in really small magazines, and then I completely reworked them. And so I have the whole list. We're trying to think of ordering, and then I realized, like, fuck, I don't have a title. I haven't even thought of a title. Haven't thought of a cover. Haven't thought of any of that shit. So I called up my buddy Nato. He's the one who helped me come up with so many of these titles, and like a Twisted Reunion, he helped me come up with that cover. Lots of these different covers he helped me come up with. Unlocking the Cage he did as well. So he's super helpful. It's always awesome to see him coming and playing with my kids too. So he came down, and within probably an hour of talking about the book and telling him what some of the certain stories were, like, we came up with the title, came up with the cover idea, and we're running with it. So right now I'm fine-tuning the drawing so I could hand that off to an artist, probably Jeff, the guy who did Ain't No Messiah over there. And then we'll have another book out relatively soon. I think probably advanced copies will probably be out in maybe, let's say, 2 months. So what are we in? July, August, September. So September, the early advanced copies will be out, and then after that, 3 months later, we'll probably release the book. And then Try Not to Die is about to be recorded. I know I've said that shit a ton, but I talked with Donna, and she's on it. And with that one, I think we're going to do 2 versions. One, which is the audiobook, just straight through the main story, so there aren't any decisions to be made. It's just the story about Becky trying to get out of Brightside. And then the other version where there are death scenes where you have to make a choice, so you have to skip ahead 1 or 2 chapters and shit like that. The reason I'm doing 2 versions is because for me, that'd get irritating if I was listening to an audiobook and I had to pay attention to, okay, what were those choices and how do I skip? And then when you die, you got to skip back to, like, that seems like it'd be a pain in the ass. Probably more fun as well. So I'll just leave it up to the listener. So I'll put out both versions. I need to send a message to find a way in Audible and see how to go about that, but it shouldn't be difficult. But that one, yeah, so that is in the process. Still don't know when we're going to run the competition. That depends on when that book is done. But the good thing is there's a lot of cool shit happening. Another cool thing that's happening. A couple weeks ago, I sent my dad a message saying, hey, this is just, I'm asking you to do me a favor. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but all I want you to do is come up with a story idea for Try Not to Die. Because I know my dad at one point had wanted to write. I think that was a goal early on. He was a high school English teacher. He was an editor most of his life. He was a journalist. He's always had a fascination with words. So, and he's edited all my stuff, or just about. So, but he always also had the idea that he couldn't be a writer, or he didn't know how to write, or whatever else. This the story that we tell ourselves, right? So I asked him to come up with this. I didn't know whether or not he was going to. And yesterday he sent me something, and it was awesome. And I was expecting like a paragraph or two. But he had like a page and a half all plotted out, and like the entire story is there, like from the start to finish. Like I could already see it. I know it'd be a cool ass book. And so I'm very hopeful that he's going to follow through and actually write it with me, because that's I know it could be done fairly quick too. So that's another possible Try Not to Die that we have going on. So I'm just going to keep starting these projects, and then however they develop, who knows when they're going to come out. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 3. But what I'm seeing now is if I continue this, even though it may feel at times that I'm not getting very far, that's really not the case. Like, I released Messiah this year, Trying to Die in Brightside is coming out this year, and now Untold Mayhem, the title we came up with for the collection. So I was like, that's not bad. 3 full books. And next year we'll be Beyond Brightside. What else? Maybe the Traumatic Brain book, part 2 of Messiah. Probably not. Although it'll be close. That's what I'm jumping on as soon as I'm done with all this shit. So I have my work cut out for me. But the awesome thing is I fucking love my work. I love writing. I love creating. And so as long as I have that attitude, that's what I will be doing. I think the story we're going to get on today will be Mommy's Little Boy. Or no, Mommy's Big Boy. Just I was thinking about the stuff that I read, all the notes about me from when I was little. So With that in mind about how I was an angry little boy, but I was also tender and loving too. So I already had those little qualities as well to kind of even it out. So going with that, let's go with Mommy's Big Boy. This was a fun one to write, and it's narrated by T-Quell, and this is off of Twisted Reunion. So hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Remember, if you're in Long Beach this next weekend, swing by the convention center for Midsummer Scream. Support your local horror writers, although it's more than local people. I think people are coming in from all over. And I will be there on Sunday. All right, guys, take it easy. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good week. Peace.
Mommy's Big Boy. Stacy held her 1-year-old on her lap, cooing and trying to get her boy to say the name of her latest man. Say it for Mommy. Come on, Brendan. Say Harry. Brendan tilted his head to the side and gazed into his mother's eyes. Babies always look like little drunks, Stacy thought. Brendan's eyes were glossy and trying to focus. Look, he's about to say it, Stacy said. Harry didn't take his eyes off the baseball game, even when he took a sip of his Bud Light. Cool. Come on, Brendan. You know how to talk, she said. One time. Say Harry. Brendan's blue eyes sparkled, and a grin spread across his face. Harry. He did it! He did it! He said it! Stacy cheered, bouncing Brendan into the air to celebrate. Harry turned up the television and gulped the rest of his beer. Stacy saw she'd been annoying him again, apologized for being too loud. I'm going to put him to bed. It's early, but maybe we could have some alone time. Harry actually glanced over at her. That don't sound too bad. Harry used the remote control to scratch the side of his neck. All right, I won't be long. Stacy stood with Brendan. Who's Mommy's big boy? Stacy gently tossed her little guy in her hands. Are you ready for bed? Brendan shook his head and used sign language to say that he was hungry. Stacy had taught him how to do it after watching a rerun of Oprah. Brendan had taken to it quickly. It gave him a voice, and Stacy liked that. Just now wasn't the time. No, you don't need to eat. It's time to go to bed. I'll feed you in the morning. Brendan squirmed and squealed, trying to wiggle out of her hands. Stacy had to sit back down to catch him. Before she could control him, he turned sideways and positioned himself under her breast. Stacy laughed as Brendan tried to lift her shirt. Quit it, Brendan! Brendan screamed when she held on her top. His scream grew louder. The hell's he crying about? Harry asked. He wants me to feed him. Give him a bottle if it'll shut him up. No, look at him. He wants me to feed him. Harry waited for the commercial before turning around. That's disgusting. I don't want to see that. It's perfectly natural. I don't care. I can't handle the thought of some kid sucking on your tits. Well, it's not like that. It's no big deal. Yeah, it is. It's gross. Don't ever do that around me. Don't ever talk about it. He turned back to the TV. And get him to shut up. Little fucker's giving me a goddamn headache. I'm sorry, Stacy said both to Brendan and Harry. She got out of the chair and walked Brendan to the bedroom. I'll put him to bed. I'll be back in a minute. Stacy laid Brendan in his crib, but in no time he was up on his feet, rattling the top railing. He continued to scream. She gave his cheek a gentle squeeze and smoothed his fine blonde hair. I'm so sorry, Brendan. Mommy's sorry. Just do this for me. I wish you could understand. Harry's not a bad guy, and I want to keep him around for a bit. But he won't stick if you keep on crying like that. He'll like you. I swear it. Oh, baby, please stop crying, will you? I need you to go to bed, sweetheart, please. Brendan unleashed an ear-piercing shriek. I'm sorry, honey. Stacy forced herself away from the crib. You need to go to bed. I'll see you in the morning. Before she changed her mind and picked up her screaming baby from the crib, Stacy walked from the room, leaving the door open an inch so she could peek in later without waking him. When she returned to the living room, she heard Brendan wailing over the baby monitor positioned next to the television. Harry glared at her, and then the monitor. "Come on, Stace, I gotta listen to this? Are you serious?" Stacy grabbed the monitor and lowered the volume. "I'm sorry, I forgot about it." Harry turned up the television. "I can still hear him." "Well, I need to leave it on. This is so I can hear him." "I don't buy that. What about all the babies that came before those stupid things came out? They all came out fine. My mom didn't have one of those things." "It makes me feel better." She sat on the couch, lowered the monitor so she could barely hear Brendan's cries over the baseball game. "Does that little bastard always scream like that?" Stacy winced. "The funny thing is, he never used to, even right after his dad died. It wasn't until last week that he started throwing these tantrums." Brendan's dad had passed 8 months earlier. He and Stacy had already planned on splitting, but it still tore her up to think about his death. Harry shrugged his shoulders and returned his attention to the game. "Probably does it because you baby him too much. Treat him like a man, or he'll grow up to be a damn sissy." "He's only 1. Put him on a schedule and don't treat him like he's helpless. He'll stop crying, trust me." "You're probably right." "I am." He clicked off the game, which ended with the Tigers winning by 3. "So now that he's in bed, how about showing me some attention?" "I'd love to." She hurried over and sat on his lap. Harry looked down and noticed the monitor in her hands. "What about that alone time you were talking about?" She had left the door cracked and promised herself she'd keep one ear listening for Brendan. "There, it's off." She kissed him on the cheek and set the monitor on the coffee table. "How's that?" "That's a start." Harry pushed Stacy off his lap so he could dig into his jeans pocket. He held up a plastic baggie. "I brought us a little snack." A pile of shriveled brown objects sat at the bottom of the bag. "What are those?" "Mushrooms. Ever tried them?" "Mushrooms? No way." "Never? You have no idea what you're missing out on." Stacy's cousin had tried to get her to take them in high school, but one taste had nearly made her puke, and she'd spit it out. She tried pulling Harry to his feet. "We don't need that to have a good time. Come on, I'll show you." Harry pulled away from her grasp, but kept eye contact. "Just try one. It'll bring us closer. You gotta try it." "But what about Brendan?" "He's asleep." Harry slid his arm up Stacy's forearm, gave her goosebumps. "What if he wakes and needs me? And what about nursing him? Can it mess up my milk?" Harry yanked his hand away. "God damn it, Stacy, what did I say about that crap? He's a boy, not a damn glass figurine." "I don't want to do anything that can hurt him." Harry opened the bag and placed 2 of the shrunken mushrooms on his palm. "It's fine." He placed one in his mouth and held the other out to her. "They've done all kinds of tests on it." "You mean studies?" "Yeah, that's what I said." He surprised her and stuck the other mushroom in her mouth. "Just take it." Stacy was about to spit it out, but then Harry said, "You were the one that said you wanted to keep me around a bit, that I wasn't so bad." Stacy was going to deny it, but he pulled her into his chest. He stroked her cheek, forced her mouth closed. "There you go. That's good. Just chew it up and relax. You deserve this. Here, lie down on the floor. Here, let me just put this down." Harry spread a blanket over the worn carpet and flipped on the radio. "We'll just relax and watch some music for a while." "That's right. Just come down here and get comfortable." Stacy stopped chewing the nasty stem, lay on her back, and stared up at the ceiling. Nothing happened for a while. But then everything began to spin. Harry just kept stroking her arm, telling her to relax. He crawled on top of her, slid his jeans past his knees. She woke a few minutes later, or was it hours, to the sound of a salesman announcing the best deals at Pete's Pontiac. Still half asleep, she blocked out the radio ad, rolled onto her side, and spooned Harry's sleeping body. She saw movement in her peripheral vision. Through blurry eyes, Stacy saw Brendan standing next to Harry's head. Brendan was struggling to hold a potted plant. He lifted the pot into the air and took a step closer to Harry's head. Stacy cried out for Brendan to set the pot down. He turned his head so fast that he lost his balance and fell onto his side, the pot breaking on the floor. Brendan got to his feet and shoved his finger against his tiny lips. "Not a word, bitch," he said, and ran toward his room, his little legs struggling to balance his chubby body. Stacy told herself she was hallucinating. She closed her eyes and drifted off again. Brendan's high-pitched screams and an eyeful of warm sunshine woke Stacy from her deep sleep. The clock told her it was already past 7 o'clock. Brendan always ate by 5:30, 6 at the latest. No wonder he was screaming bloody murder. Although her head was pounding and her lower back was killing her, Stacy picked herself up off the floor. She hurried to Brendan's room, afraid the baby's cries would wake Harry, who was still sprawled naked on the floor. Brendan stopped crying and smiled at her. As she went to pick him up, Stacy bumped into the tiny chair someone had placed next to the crib. Using the bottom of her shirt, she wiped the tears from his eyes and the snot from his lip. "Hush, big boy. Mama's here. I'm sorry, Brendan. You must be starving." Brendan smiled and gestured in sign language that he wanted to eat. She sat on the rocking chair and pulled up her shirt so he could feed. She was just thinking back to her crazy dream of Brendan holding the potted plant when Brendan bit down on her nipple. "Ow! What are you doing?" Stacy pulled him away from her and stood him on her lap. "Don't bite. That hurt Mommy." Brendan shook his oversized head and stared disapprovingly at her and clearly said, "How about you wash your tits after letting that scumbag slobber all over them? If I wanted to taste shitty beer and stale cigarettes, I'd ask you to kiss me." Stacy held him at arm's length. It took a few seconds to find any words, but when she did, she screamed for Harry. Brendan smiled as Harry crashed about the living room, yelled for her to calm down. Harry appeared in the doorway, looking worse than Stacy felt. What the hell is it?" Stacy kept Brendan at arm's length. It's him. He talked." "You woke me up because of that?" No, she cried. You don't understand. He talked like an adult. He had a man's voice and was so mean. This isn't my son." Harry looked at the smiling baby and back at Stacy. "You're out of your damn mind. It's just the shrooms." No, I was feeding him, and he bit me. He said..." "What did I say about that? I told you not to mention that crap." "I'm sorry, but..." Before Harry could interrupt her, she said, "He bit me and said my boob tasted like beer and cigarettes." Harry laughed and slapped his thigh. "Jesus, Stacy, you're still tripping. Put the kid in the crib. You need to get your head straight." "You think it's the mushrooms? I'm still high." "What do you think, Brainiac? Come on, put him down and fix me some breakfast. It'll make you feel better." Harry left the room and said, "Wake me when it's ready. I want eggs." Stacy set Brendan in the crib and stepped back. She studied her giggling boy and felt disgusted with herself. He was so adorable, and he couldn't speak. He was one, and she was high. She bent down to nuzzle her son's cheek, whispered his name lovingly. A sick grin spread across his face. "Why are we whispering?" Stacy stifled a scream, reminded herself that she was still experiencing the drugs. She looked at the chair next to the crib. "Did you get out of your crib last night?" Brendan nodded. "And you aren't going to say a word, are you, Mommy?" His voice was so deep. Stacy gasped and pinched herself, hoping the pain would snap her out of this horrific illusion. When it didn't, she said, "What were you trying to do?" "Let's just say the prick got lucky. If it weren't for these fat baby fingers, his brain would have been mush. Harry? What now? He asked from the other room. He's doing it again. Get out of there, Stace, Harry ordered. You're tripping. Drink some water and fix some goddamn eggs. And don't make them all runny. Brendan waved a mocking goodbye as Stacy backed out of the room. In the living room, she noticed the pot, cracked and on its side next to where Harry had been sleeping. Oh my God, the pot. Relax. Harry covered his face with the blanket to hide from the morning sunshine. I think I kicked it over when I got up. I mean, it's your fault, though. You scared the crap out of me when you yelled like that. You broke it? Who cares? The thing was ugly anyway. Go buy a new one if it bothers you so much. Stacy wanted to tell Harry about her dream, but it would only upset him even more. Instead, she did as she was told and cooked breakfast. The sunlight was intense, but she felt like she was regaining some sobriety. After she slid the plate of fried eggs in front of Harry, Stacy took a bottle of milk to Brendan's room. She was relieved to see he was curled up under his blanket. Stacy walked to the crib and set the bottle on the nightstand. She was about to pull the blanket down when she heard a noise behind her and whipped around. Brendan was a few feet away trying to pick up a pair of scissors from the floor. Before he could cut himself, Stacy snatched the sewing scissors and set them on the cabinet. She turned back to her son, who cursed under his breath, looking down at his hands. Stupid goddamn fingers, he said. Keeping one eye on Brendan, Stacy lifted the blanket and saw the pillow underneath it. What were you trying to do, Brendan? Her voice shook. Let's just say we'll call you lucky this time. Stacy picked Brendan up, holding him as far away as possible, and took him into the living room. She set him in front of Harry and said, Please watch him for a minute. I need to take a bath. I don't feel good at all. My mind's all screwed up. When is this stuff going to wear off? You can't worry about it. If you panic, it'll only make things worse. Hurry up and take a bath. I'll watch him. Thanks, Harry. I owe you. With his back to Harry, Brendan put his fist in front of his O-shaped mouth and rapidly jerked it up and down, showing Stacy he knew how she'd repay her boyfriend. She pretended she didn't see the obscene gesture and ran off to the bathroom. After setting the radio on the ledge and turning on an easy listening station, she eased into the warm water and tried to relax. She promised God that she would never again take drugs. She begged him to cleanse her mind, take away the evil thoughts. She loved Brendan and hated herself for thinking such terrible things about him. Stacy had been in the bath for quite some time when there was a low knock on the door. I'll be out in a minute, Harry. The knocking persisted. Is everything okay? Brendan's not causing too much trouble, is he? The doorknob turned back and forth. Finally, the catch released, and the door pushed open. And there was Brendan, standing on top of his rock and roll Tigger. Brendan had opened the door before, doing this very thing. But his sick smile told her the drugs were still coursing through her mind. He got down on his knees and backed off the toy, carefully easing one leg down, and then the other so he didn't lose his balance. Before he turned toward her, he picked up his favorite red ball in his right hand, and something else in his left. Did you want to play catch? She looked around the bathroom, actually thinking about what she could use as a weapon before scolding herself. He's your son. Jesus, get it together, Stacy. She held her hands in front of her. Want to throw it to Mommy? Wouldn't Harry play with you? Brendan stepped into the bathroom, his left hand behind his back, his right clutching the red ball. Oh, don't worry about him. That motherfucker got what he deserved. What? Brendan smiled and moved closer to the tub. I made a joke. Get it? Your mommy. Brendan could barely control his giggles. And he's screwing you. Mofo. Brendan, stop this right now. I love you, but you need to listen to me. Brendan bounced the ball up and down on his palm, his dexterity much improved. You treat that loser better than your own son. What kind of mom does that? I'm sorry, honey. It's just that Mommy's getting older and it's hard to find a decent man. You are getting old, and Harry was probably the best you'll ever get. I think I like my chances of getting a foster family. With my angelic face and adorable smile, I'll be picked up quick. Maybe I'll have a proper house, some decent threads. He tugged at the zipper of his ratty sleeper. These Salvation Army rags aren't flying. Brendan, I'm a good mom. You named me Brendan, for Christ's sakes. You want me to be some sissy boy? Don't say that. Your father named you. Oh, what a great guy Daddy was, shaking the crap out of me every night. No, he didn't. You know what else he didn't do? He didn't commit suicide on the bed. I'm dreaming. Stacy closed her eyes and shook her head. This isn't real. He showed her the fist he'd been holding behind his back. Is this real? Stacy stared at Harry's eyeball and screamed. Brendan tossed the bloody orb into the tub. His whole body shook with laughter as his mom slapped it away from her. Don't worry, Brendan said. Harry doesn't need it. Stacy struggled to stand in the tub, waiting for his next move. He threw the ball at her. Stacy moved to her right and then saw the malicious sparkle in Brendan's eyes. Realized too late what he'd been aiming for. The radio wobbled on the edge of the counter and fell toward the water before Stacy could leap from the tub. The electricity paralyzed her, and Stacy's eyes fixed on her big boy.